The silence on the bridge of the Eldrin Collective flagship, steward of the void, was a living thing. It was the deep, resonant quiet of 1,000 cycles of vigilance, a peace earned through treaties and maintained by the steady hum of the ship's life support. Commander Vorlag, his multifaceted eyes scanning the star-dusted abyss on the main holodisplay, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The Pax Celestis, their most revered celestial alignment, was approaching, a time of harmony, of quiet contemplation. His ship, a bastion of the Eldran fleet, patrolled the border of the neutral zones, a silent guardian of the galactic accord. On the lower deck, Junior Communications Officer Lyra adjusted the gain on her receiver, her delicate antennae twitching with practiced focus. Her role was to listen to the void, to filter the cosmic chatter of pulsars and quasars from the faint whispers of distant vessels. It was a meditative task, usually as predictable as the ship's orbital path. But then, something broke the pattern. A signal, sharp and intrusive, sliced through the background radiation. It was structured, artificial, and broadcast on a tightly restricted diplomatic channel. 571. It was also human. Lyra's mandibles clicked in surprise. She rerouted the signal to the main bridge speakers, her movements suddenly sharp. Vorlag turned from the viewport, his gaze hardening. The air thickened with a sudden, shared tension. The soft, ambient chimes of the bridge were abruptly silenced by a burst of harsh static, followed by a voice. It was a human voice, deep and thunderous, laced with an arrogance that scraped against the delicate sensibilities of every Eldrin present. The voice declared, "This is the human battle titan Ares. By the authority of the Sol Mandate, we claim this sector. All non-human vessels are ordered to disengage and retreat beyond the Cerulean Nebula. Failure to comply will be interpreted as an act of hostility. You have one rotation. Ares out." The silence that followed was heavier, colder than before. It was the silence of disbelief, of a peace shattered. Lyra stared at her console, her antennae flattened against her head in a gesture of distress. A battle titan, a human one. The name itself, Ares, was a declaration of war, a name plucked from the aggressor pantheon of its species' violent history. And it had broadcast on an official, peaceful channel, an act of profound diplomatic insult. Vorlag's voice was dangerously calm. He said, "Trace the signal's origin. Full power to the sensor array. I want to know everything about that ship, and get me a direct link to Fleet Command." Now, the message, amplified by the Eldrin comms network, rippled outward from the Steward of the Void. On Zalath Prime, a world of verdant, rolling hills and serene scholars, the broadcast interrupted the morning meditations. In the crystalline spires of Orinthia 1, traders paused their negotiations, their multifaceted eyes turning toward the sky. On the militant world of Valter 2, the transmission was met with a roar of outrage. War drums, silent for generations, began to beat a slow, ominous rhythm. Panic, a contagion of fear and uncertainty, spread faster than any ship could travel. The humans, a species known for their chaotic ambition and brutal internal conflicts, had finally turned their gaze outward, and their first word was a threat. Far from the Eldron frontier, aboard the human diplomatic vessel Vanguard, Captain Eva Rostova watched the same transmission replay on her private screen. Her face was grim, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of her desk. The Vanguard was a titan. Yes, but it was a vessel of peace, a mobile embassy designed for first contact and delicate negotiation. It was currently en route to the Tau Ceti system for a trade summit, a mission that was now utterly compromised. Her first officer, Kalen, stood beside her, his expression a mixture of fury and frustration. Kalen said, "Ares, it had to be Admiral Thorne's pet project. He's finally done it. Gone completely rogue." Rostova said, "He's not just rogue, Kalen. He's declared war on a species we've never even spoken to. He used a diplomatic channel to deliver an ultimatum. The Eldren Collective will see this as an unprovoked, official act of aggression from all of humanity." She slammed her hand on the desk, the sound echoing her frustration. Every cycle of progress, every treaty, every handshake, undone in 30 seconds by a man who still thinks the universe is a territory to be conquered. The Vanguard's mission had just changed. There was no more trade summit. There was only damage control on a galactic scale. Rostova straightened up, her captain's composure settling over her like a mantle. She said, "Get me, Doctor, Ares Thorne, and plot a course to the last known coordinates of the R's. Maximum burn. We're not just chasing a rogue titan anymore. We're chasing the ghost of a war we can't afford to fight." Doctor. Ares Thorne, a man whose life had been a quiet rebellion against his family's military legacy, was in the xenolinguistics lab when the summons came. He was surrounded by holographic displays of alien syntax, his mind lost in the elegant grammar of a species from the Andromeda galaxy. Ares was a codebreaker, but his codes were languages, his goal not to exploit, but to understand. He was also the younger brother of Admiral Jax Thorne, the man at the helm of the heirs. When Kalen's voice came over the intercom, Ares felt a familiar knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that his brother had finally broken his leash. On the bridge, Ares listened to the recording of the Ares transmission, his face pale. He heard the arrogance, the unyielding certainty in his brother's voice. He said, "He's using the Sol mandate. It's an archaic, xenophobic doctrine that was formally disavowed a century ago. He's invoking a ghost to justify his actions." Rostova looked at him, her eyes sharp. She said, "Can you talk to him? Can you reason with him?" Ares shook his head slowly. "My brother doesn't reason. He commands. He believes humanity's destiny is to rule, that our survival depends on dominance. He sees diplomacy as weakness. Trying to talk him down now would be like asking a star to stop burning." Kalen said, "So we can't stop him with words. What about with weapons?" Rostova answered, "The Vanguard is a diplomatic vessel. We have shields, but our weapon systems are purely defensive. The Ares is a state-of-the-art battle titan, bristling with particle cannons and plasma torpedoes. We're outgunned 10-1. A direct confrontation would be suicide." A tense silence filled the bridge. They were faster than the R's, but they couldn't fight it. They had to find another way. Ares stepped forward, his mind racing, piecing together fragments of culture and history. He said, "We can't talk to my brother, but maybe we can talk to the Eldren." The transmission was an insult, a threat, but it was also a message, and a message can be countered with another message. Rostova looked at him, a flicker of interest in her eyes. "What are you proposing, Doctor?" Ares said, "My brother's message was one of brute force. We need to send one of nuance, of intelligence. We need to show the Eldren that humanity is not a monolith. That for every Jax Thorne, there's us. We need to offer them something they can't get from a cannon. We need to offer them truth." Meanwhile, the Eldren Collective was in turmoil. On the bridge of the Steward of the Void, Commander Vorlag watched the holo display as reports flooded in from across their territory. Fleets were scrambling, planetary defenses were being raised. The scholars of Zalath Prime were frantically cross-referencing the humans' words with their limited data on human culture, trying to understand the context of the threat. The militants of Valter II were demanding an immediate, overwhelming counterattack. Lyra, the communications officer, approached him, her antennae trembling slightly. She said, "Commander, Fleet Command has authorized a full defensive posture. They are mobilizing the 3rd and 5th Fleets to the border. They are preparing for war." Vorlag looked at the swirling colors of the Cerulean Nebula on the screen, the place the human Titan had demanded they retreat to. He felt the weight of his command, the responsibility for the lives of his crew, for the peace of his people. An unprovoked attack required a response. But something about the human transmission felt wrong. It was too blunt, too simple. It was the move of a bully, not a strategist. He said, "Hold the mobilization order. Tell Fleet Command we are holding our position to observe. We will not fire unless fired upon." An older officer on the bridge, Sub-Commander Krell, turned to him in shock. Krell said, "Commander, they have threatened us. They have claimed our sovereign territory. To wait is to show weakness." Vorlag's gaze was steady. He said, "No, Sub-Commander. To react without thinking is to show weakness. The human has made a move on the board. Now, we will see what their next move is. Keep all sensors focused on their last known position. And Lyra, keep listening." Aboard the Vanguard, a plan was forming. It was a desperate, audacious plan, born from Iris Thorne's deep understanding of galactic history and Rostova's willingness to take a calculated risk. They couldn't offer apologies. Not yet. An apology without context would sound like a trick. They needed to offer a gift, a gesture of goodwill so significant that it would force the Eldren to pause, to question the narrative that the Ares had established. Ares stood before the main holo display, which now showed a complex three-dimensional star chart. He said, "This is the complete galactic cartography database from the Voyager 3 probe, updated with our own sensor data. It contains detailed maps of every known sector, including the disputed territories along the Orion Arm." Kalen whistled softly. He said, "That data is classified at the highest level. It's one of our biggest strategic advantages." Aris nodded. "Exactly. And we're going to give it to them, not all of it. Just a piece, a very specific piece." He zoomed in on a section of the map, a cluster of stars shimmering on the edge of Eldrin space. This is the Zar Thaliun expanse. Officially, it's unexplored territory, but our long-range sensors have mapped it. It's rich in rare minerals, and it contains 3 M-class planets suitable for colonization. According to their historical records, the Eldren believe this region to be cursed, a place where ships vanish. They call it the Void of Whispers. Rostova said, "And our data shows what's really there?" Aris said, "Our data shows a series of gravitational anomalies, easily navigable with the right shield modulations. The curse is just complex physics. By giving them these maps, we're not just giving them resources. We're solving one of their oldest mysteries. We're showing them a truth they thought was unknowable." The plan was set. They would approach the Eldren fleet, not with weapons powered, but with their communication systems broadcasting on a wide, open channel. They would send a new message, a message of peace, and they would offer the Zar Thaliun maps as proof of their sincerity. It was a gamble. The Eldran might see it as a trap, a Trojan horse. They might simply destroy the Vanguard before it even had a chance to speak. As the Vanguard raced toward the Eldran border, its engines pushing the limits of space-time, Rostova addressed the crew. Her voice was calm, steady, a rock in a sea of uncertainty. She said, "What we are about to do is unprecedented. We are willingly approaching a fleet that has every reason to consider us hostile. We are offering them our secrets in the hope that they will see the truth. Every one of you has a role to play. Stay focused, stay professional. The future of our species may depend on what happens in the next few hours." On the Steward of the Void, Lyra's antennas shot up. She said, "Commander, another human vessel has just entered our sensor range. It's moving fast, on a direct intercept course." Krell slammed his fist on a console. He said, "A second Titan. It's an invasion. Commander, we must act." Vorlag held up a hand, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. A new icon had appeared, a blue triangle representing the approaching ship, distinct from the red diamond of the Ares. He said, "Is it broadcasting?" Lyra listened intently. She said, "Yes, Commander. On an open, unencrypted channel. It's a message. For us." Vorlag leaned forward, his voice a low command. "Put it on screen." The bridge of the Vanguard was silent as they waited for a response. They had sent their message, a carefully crafted statement by Aris, explaining that they were a diplomatic vessel, that they came in peace, and that they wished to offer a gift to demonstrate their goodwill. Now they were drifting, their shields at minimum power, their fate in the hands of a species they had never met. Rostova watched the Eldran flagship on the main viewer. It was a magnificent vessel, its organic, flowing lines a stark contrast to the hard, angular design of human ships. It was holding its position, but she could see the subtle energy fluctuations that indicated its weapon ports were open. Aris stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. He had done all he could. He had chosen his words, his gift, with all the care of a master diplomat. He had tried to build a bridge of understanding. Now, he could only wait to see if the Eldran were willing to cross it. After what felt like an eternity, a message came back. It was not a voice, but a stream of data. The ship's computer began to translate it, displaying the text on the screen. It read, "Human vessel, Vanguard. We have received your message. Your request is unusual. Your species has sent conflicting signals. We do not understand your intentions. Hold your position. Do not deviate. We are considering your offer." A collective sigh of relief went through the bridge. They weren't dead yet. The Eldran were willing to listen. The first, most dangerous hurdle had been cleared. Vorlag stood before the holographic display of the Zarthalian expanse, the human data painting a new, detailed picture over their old, fearful maps. He and his senior officers had been studying it for an hour, their best astrometricians confirming the validity of the data. It was real. The humans had given them a treasure, a key to a region they had feared for centuries. Krell was still skeptical. He said, "It could be a trick, Commander. A way to lure us into this expanse where the heirs lies in wait." Vorlag shook his head. The heirs is still holding its position on the far side of the nebula. And this data, it is too detailed, too perfect to be a fabrication. No, this is something else. This is a schism. The humans are at war with themselves. Lyra entered the briefing room. She said, "Commander, the Vanguard has sent another message. They wish to open a direct, real-time communication channel. They say their xenolinguist is prepared to speak with us." This was the critical moment. To open a direct channel was an act of trust. It meant lowering their firewalls, exposing themselves to potential cyber attack. But it was also the only way to move forward. Vorlag made his decision. He said, "Open the channel. Let us speak to this human." On the bridge of the Vanguard, Aris took a deep breath and stepped onto the communication platform. A holographic image of Commander Vorlag materialized before him. The Eldren was an imposing figure, his tall, slender frame exuding an aura of calm authority. Aris met his multifaceted gaze and began to speak. He did not use the ship's universal translator. Instead, he spoke in the Eldron's own formal poetic language, a language he had studied for years from fragmented data intercepts. His accent was clumsy, his grammar imperfect, but the effort was unmistakable. Aris said, "Commander Vorlag, I am Dr. Aris Thorn of the vessel Vanguard. I offer you greetings in the name of peace. We are deeply regretful for the message of aggression sent by the Titan Ares. That vessel does not speak for the people of Earth. It speaks for a faction of fear, a shadow from our own past." Vorlag listened, his expression unreadable. The fact that the human was attempting to speak his language was a powerful gesture. It showed respect, a willingness to meet them on their own terms. He replied in the same formal tongue, his voice slow and deliberate so that Aris could understand. Vorlag said, "Dr. Thorn, your words are as unexpected as your gift. You say the Ares is a rogue, but it is a human titan, flying under a human banner. How are we to know which voice speaks the truth of your species?" Aris said, "Truth is not spoken, Commander. It is demonstrated. We have offered you proof of our sincerity with the maps. Now, we offer you a warning. The Ars is not just a threat to you. It is a threat to the stability of this entire quadrant. Its commander, my brother, will not stop with this sector. His ambition is boundless. We came here to stop him, and to prevent a war that would devastate both our peoples. We cannot do it alone. We need your help." The conversation continued for hours. Aris explained the political situation on Earth, the rise of the militaristic faction led by his brother, and their desperate attempt to counter it. He answered Vorlag's questions with honesty and humility, painting a picture of a species at a crossroads, struggling to overcome its own worst instincts. As they spoke, a fragile thread of understanding began to form between the two ships, a thread woven from shared intelligence and a mutual desire to avert catastrophe. Vorlag began to see the truth in Aris's words. The humans were not a monolith. They were a species of contradictions, capable of both great violence and great wisdom. Finally, Vorlag made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. He said, "Dr. Thorn, your words have given us much to consider. We will not treat your vessel as hostile. We will accept your offer of dialogue, but trust must be earned. We will escort you to a neutral location, the ancient space station known as the Sargol Nexus. There we will meet in person and discuss what is to be done about your brother and his battle titan." The First Galactic War had been averted, but a new, more complex challenge had just begun. The race to stop the Ars was on, and the fate of two species now rested on a fragile, untested alliance forged in the silent depths of space. The journey to the Sargol Nexus was a study in quiet tension. The Vanguard flew in formation with the Steward of the Void, two predators from different worlds swimming through the sea of stars together. On the human bridge, Captain Rostova kept her crew on a high state of alert, their hands never far from their consoles. They were guests, but they were also prisoners, their safety entirely dependent on the word of an alien commander they had only just met. Kalen voiced the concern that was on everyone's mind. He said, "Captain, are we sure about this? We're deep in their territory, completely at their mercy. What if this is an elaborate trap? Rostova watched the Eldron flagship on the main viewer. It moved with a silent, fluid grace that belied its immense size. She said, "Commander Vorlag could have destroyed us back at the border. He chose not to. He's a strategist, not a brute. He knows that my brother is the real threat here. For now, our goals are aligned." To foster this new, fragile trust, Rostova had authorized a series of controlled information exchanges. Her chief engineer, a woman named Glint, with a knack for creative problem-solving, was in heaven. She and her Eldron counterpart, a being named Xylar, spent hours sending data packets back and forth, comparing the philosophies behind their technologies. Human engineering, Glint explained, was a thing of brute force and redundancy. Their ships were built to withstand punishment, with heavy armor, backup systems for their backup systems, and engines that tore holes in space-time to achieve faster-than-light travel. Eldron technology, by contrast, was elegant, efficient, and deeply integrated with organic components. Their ships didn't tear through space. They harmonized with it, riding gravitational waves like a surfer on an ocean current. Their hulls were not plated steel, but a biocrystalline lattice that could repair itself. Glint, in a moment of inspiration, sent Xylar the schematics for her prototype XenoSync 4.6 adapter, the one she'd famously tested on her coffee maker. It was a device designed to bridge the gap between wildly different communication protocols. 2 hours later, a message came back from the Eldron ship. It was a complex algorithm that, when integrated into the XenoSync's core programming, improved its efficiency by over 200%. Attached to the message was a single, untranslatable Eldron glyph. When Aris saw it, he smiled. He said, "It's a symbol of mutual respect, the kind shared between artisans." While the engineers found common ground, Aris and Vorlag continued their dialogue. They spoke of history, of philosophy, of the great successes and catastrophic failures of their respective species. Aris learned that the Eldren were an ancient race, one that had seen empires rise and fall. They valued stability above all else, viewing the chaotic, rapid expansion of younger races like humanity with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Vorlag, in turn, came to understand the deep-seated fear that drove humanity's aggression. The fear of a species that had grown up alone on a single, vulnerable planet, convinced that the universe was a dark and hostile place. As they neared the Sargal Nexus, a new player entered the game. A small, swift vessel, its hull shimmering with active camouflage, decloaked off the steward's port bow. It was a Jalkari Merchant Guild ship. The Jalkari were the information brokers of the galaxy, a species of aquatic traders who valued secrets more than gold. They sent a single, encrypted message to both ships. "We know what the heirs is planning. We have information to sell. Meet us at the Nexus." The Tangleweaver has foreseen this. The Sargal Nexus came into view, a breathtaking sight. It was not a station in the traditional sense, but a vast, hollowed-out asteroid, its interior transformed into a sprawling, multi-layered city. Ships from 100 different species swarmed around it, a chaotic ballet of commerce and intrigue. The Nexus was a neutral ground, a place where ancient enemies could share a drink in a smoky cantina, where deals that could shape the fate of the galaxy were made in hushed tones. Vorlag guided the two ships to a private docking bay, away from the prying eyes of the main thoroughfares. As they prepared to disembark, Rostova, Aris, and Kalin stood in the Vanguard's airlock. They were about to step onto alien territory, to meet face-to-face with the beings they had almost gone to war with. Rostova looked at her team. She said, "No weapons. formal diplomatic attire. And let me do the talking, unless I ask for your input. We are here to build an alliance, not to win an argument. Remember that. The air in the docking bay was a strange cocktail of a dozen different atmospheric compositions, filtered and mixed into a breathable, if slightly acrid blend. Commander Vorlag and Sub-Commander Krell were waiting for them. In person, the Eldren were even more imposing, their height and slender grace giving them an almost ethereal quality. Vorlag inclined his head in a gesture of greeting. He said, "Captain Rostova, Dr. Thorne, welcome to the Sargol Nexus. I have secured a neutral meeting chamber where we can speak freely." As they walked through the corridors of the Nexus, Aris was struck by the sheer diversity of life. He saw silicon-based life forms from a high-gravity world lumbering past insectoid beings, chittering in a language of clicks and whistles. The air hummed with the energy of 1,000 different agendas, 1,000 different secrets. Their meeting place was a quiet, circular room deep within the station. The only furniture was a large, round table made of polished obsidian. Waiting for them was a figure shrouded in data-embroidered robes, their face hidden in the shadows of a deep hood. This was the Tangle Weaver, the enigmatic leader of the Jalkari's Echo Seekers, a guild of information scavengers. The Tangle Weaver's voice was a synthesized chorus of a dozen different voices, speaking in perfect, unaccented galactic standard. It said, "The threads of fate have woven you all together in this time and place. The human aggressor, the human peacemaker, and the Eldrin observer. A storm is coming, and you are at its eye." Rostova stepped forward. She said, "You have information about the Asterisk Ares." The Tangle Weaver nodded. Admiral Jax Thorne is not acting alone. He is backed by a powerful consortium of human industrialists and military hardliners. They believe humanity's manifest destiny is to control this quadrant. The attack on the Eldrin was not a random act of aggression. It was a test. Aris felt a chill run down his spine. He said, "A test for what?" The Tangle Weaver's synthesized voice was grim. To gauge the response time and military capabilities of the major galactic powers. The Heirs is currently en route to the Vraxic Empire, where it plans to stage a false flag attack, making it look as though the Eldren have violated their non-aggression pact. They intend to provoke a war between the two oldest powers in the galaxy, a war that would destabilize the entire region and allow humanity to seize control in the ensuing chaos. The sheer audacity of the plan was staggering. Jax Thorne wasn't just a rogue admiral. He was the tip of a spear, the trigger for a plan that had been years in the making. Vorlag's multifaceted eyes narrowed. He said, "The Vraxic are a proud, warrior race. They would not listen to our denials. They would see only the attack, and they would retaliate with overwhelming force." The Tangle Weaver is correct. It would be a war we could not win. Rostova looked at each of them in turn. The calm, calculating Eldran commander, the enigmatic information broker, and her own brilliant, troubled xenolinguist. An unlikely alliance, forged by a common threat. She said, "Then we have to stop him. We have to get to the Vraxic before the Ars does and warn them. We need proof, something that will convince them that the threat is real and that it comes from humanity, not the Eldrin." The Tangle Weaver extended a hand, its long, slender fingers emerging from the robe. In its palm was a small, crystalline data chip. It said, "This is the complete, unencrypted communication log between Admiral Thorne and his backers for the last 6 months. It contains everything: their plans, their motives, their timetable. It is the proof you need. It is my gift to you." A stable galaxy is good for business. A galactic war is not. The path forward was clear, but it was fraught with peril. The Vraxic Empire was notoriously xenophobic, and they were unlikely to welcome a human and an Eldron ship appearing on their border. But they had no other choice. They had to try. As they left the meeting chamber, Rostova felt the weight of their task settle upon her. They were no longer just trying to stop a rogue Titan. They were trying to prevent a galactic war, armed with nothing but a data chip and a fragile, untested alliance. The fate of billions now rested on their shoulders. The real mission had just begun. The race to Vraxic space was a desperate, frantic sprint across 1,000 light years. The Heirs, with its powerful military-grade engines, had a significant head start. The combined crews of the Vanguard and the Steward of the Void worked around the clock, pushing their ships and themselves to the absolute limit. The alliance, born of necessity, was now being forged in the crucible of a shared, high-stakes mission. In the Vanguard's engine room, Glint and Xylar worked side by side, a strange but effective pair. Glint, with her grease-stained jumpsuit and chaotic energy, and Xylar, whose movements were as precise and deliberate as a master watchmaker's. They were attempting something that had never been done before. Synchronizing a human warp drive with an Eldrin gravitational drive. Glint said, "If we can get the warp field to harmonize with the gravwell they generate, we can create a stable corridor. It's like paving a road through space-time instead of just punching a hole in it. It should be faster, more efficient." Xylar, observing the energy readings on his console, replied in his soft, humming tone, "The resonance frequencies are unstable. Your drive is loud. It shouts at the universe. Ours whispers. We must teach yours to whisper and ours to shout." The solution was as elegant as it was unorthodox. By routing the Eldrin's gravitic energy through the Vanguard's Xeno sync adapter, they were able to modulate the warp field, smoothing out its violent, chaotic energies. The two ships, flying in close formation, created a shared, stable bubble of space-time, allowing them to travel at speeds neither could have achieved alone. They were cutting Thorn's lead in half, but it was still a race against the clock. While the engineers worked their magic, Aris and Vorlag prepared for the diplomatic battle ahead. They studied the Tangleweaver's data chip, poring over the communications between Jax Thorn and his co-conspirators. The picture it painted was chilling. Jax was not just a zealot. He was a charismatic, manipulative leader who had built a cult of personality around himself, preying on the fears and ambitions of his followers. Aris felt a profound sense of shame and responsibility. He said to Vorlag, "I saw the signs for years. The way he talked about aliens as Xenos. The way he dismissed diplomacy as a fool's game. I told myself he was just passionate. I didn't want to see the darkness that was growing inside him." Vorlag placed a hand on Aris's shoulder, a gesture of comfort that transcended the boundaries of their species. He said, "You cannot hold yourself responsible for the choices of your brother. You are responsible only for your own. And you have chosen the path of peace. That is what matters now." Their greatest challenge would be convincing the Vraxic. The Vraxic Empire was an ancient, feudal society, a species of reptilian warriors who lived by a strict code of honor. They were fiercely territorial and deeply suspicious of outsiders. Their leader, the warlord Hakar, was a veteran of 100 conflicts, a cunning and ruthless strategist who had never lost a battle. Aris said, "The Vraxic don't trade in information. They trade in strength. We can't just show them the data chip. They'll see it as a trick, a sign of weakness. We have to approach them on their own terms. We have to issue a challenge. Rostova, listening in on the conversation, raised an eyebrow. She said, "A challenge? We're trying to prevent a war, Aris, not start a new one." Aris explained, "In Vraxic culture, a formal challenge, a K-Thar, is a sacred thing. It's a demand to be heard, a trial by combat not of weapons, but of wits and honor. We will arrive at their border, and I will issue a Cathar to Warlord Hakar. I will challenge his right to lead his people into a war based on a lie. It's a massive gamble. If he accepts, we will have a chance to present our evidence. If he refuses, he will have us executed as spies." The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal, but it was the only one they had. As they entered the outer edge of Vraxic space, the two ships dropped out of their shared warp bubble. The festive, chaotic lights of the Sargol Nexus were replaced by the cold, hard glare of Vraxic military patrols. A squadron of their fighters, sleek, predatory ships shaped like daggers, immediately surrounded them. A harsh, guttural voice crackled over the comms, speaking a language that was all sharp edges and aggressive consonants. The universal translator struggled to keep up, rendering the message as unidentified vessels. You have violated Vraxic's sovereign space. State your intentions or be obliterated. Rostova took a steadying breath. She looked at Aris, who nodded, his face set with a grim determination. This was the moment of truth. She opened a channel. She said, "Vraxic Patrol, this is Captain Eva Rostova of the human vessel Ash Vanguard. We come in peace on a mission of urgent diplomatic importance. We request an audience with Warlord Hakar. We have come to issue a Cathar." The silence that followed was absolute. The Vraxic fighters held their position, their weapon ports glowing with a menacing red light. The concept of a human, an outsider, issuing a sacred challenge to their warlord was so outrageous, so unthinkable, that it had clearly stunned them into inaction. Finally, the voice came back, its tone a mixture of disbelief and fury. "Your arrogance is astounding, human. The warlord does not entertain the challenges of insects. Your lives are forfeit." But before the fighters could open fire, a new voice cut through the channel. It was deeper, more powerful, a voice that commanded authority. It said, "Hold your fire. The human's request is bold. I am intrigued. Bring them to the capital. I will hear this challenge myself." Warlord Hakar had accepted. The first part of their gamble had paid off. Now, they had to face the warrior king of the Vraxic Empire and convince him of the truth, all while the heirs raced to spring its trap. The fate of the galaxy now hung on the outcome of a single, ancient ritual of honor. The Vraxic capital world, Vraxia, was a monument to brutal efficiency. Its cities were not sprawling metropolises, but fortified citadels carved from black, volcanic rock, connected by perfectly straight, maglev transit lines. The sky was a permanent, angry orange, choked with the dust of countless asteroid mines and weapons foundries. There was no art here, no parks, no public spaces designed for leisure. There was only function, strength, and the ever-present hum of the Vraxic war machine. The diplomatic party, Rostova, Aris, and Vorlag, were escorted from their shuttle by a squad of Vraxic honor guards. These warriors were massive, reptilian beings, their scales the color of obsidian, their bodies covered in ceremonial scars. They moved with a disciplined, predatory grace, their hands never straying far from the plasma rifles strapped to their backs. They led the trio through vast, echoing halls, their footsteps the only sound in the oppressive silence. The throne room of Warlord Hakar was a cavernous space, dominated by a single, massive throne carved from the skull of some long-extinct leviathan. Seated on the throne was Hakar himself. He was even larger than his guards, a mountain of muscle and scales, his face a roadmap of old battles. One of his eyes was a milky white, a testament to some past conflict. But the other was a sharp, intelligent gold, and it missed nothing. He watched them approach, his expression a mask of cold amusement. Aris stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He had faced down his own fears, his own family legacy, but facing this ancient warrior was a different kind of terror. He drew a deep breath, centering himself. He said, his voice clear and steady, "Warlord Hakar, I am Aris Thorn of the human vessel, Vanguard. I thank you for granting us this audience." Hakar's voice was a low rumble, like stones grinding together. He said, "Do not thank me, human. I did not grant you an audience. I granted you a stage for your own execution. You have issued a Cathar, a challenge of honor. But your species knows nothing of honor. You are a race of scavengers and opportunists. So, tell me, Aris Thorn, why should I listen to the words of an insect before I crush it?" This was the first test, a question of worthiness. Aris met Hakar's gaze without flinching. He said, "You are right, Warlord. My species is young, and we have made many mistakes. We are often driven by fear and greed. But we are also more than that. We are explorers, builders, dreamers. We have the capacity for great compassion and great courage. I do not ask you to judge all of humanity by our worst examples. I ask only that you judge me here and now, by my actions and my words." Hakar considered this, his golden eye boring into Aris. He said, "A fair answer. But words are cheap. You stand here today to betray your own brother. In my culture, there is no greater crime than treason against one's own blood. Justify this dishonor." This was the heart of the matter, the question Aris had been asking himself for weeks. He said, "My loyalty is not to a man, Warlord, not even one who shares my blood. My loyalty is to the truth. My brother has embraced a path of darkness. He seeks to plunge this galaxy into a war that will kill billions, all for his own glory. To stand by and allow that to happen would be the true dishonor. A loyalty that requires you to abandon your principles is not loyalty. It is slavery." A low murmur went through the honor guards. The human's words, his concept of a higher loyalty, were alien to them, but they resonated with a strange, compelling logic. Hakar was silent for a long moment. He said, "You speak with a conviction that is surprising. But you do not come alone. You have brought an Eldrin with you. Your people and the Eldrin have been enemies for as long as we have known of your existence. Am I to believe that this sudden alliance is anything more than a shared lie, a conspiracy to weaken my empire?" Vorlag stepped forward, his calm, measured presence a stark contrast to the Vraxic's aggressive energy. He said, "Warlord Hakar, it is true that our peoples have a history of mistrust. But we have a common enemy now, one who threatens to destroy everything we have both built. The threat posed by the Rs is real. We have come to you not as Eldrin and human, but as members of a galactic community seeking to prevent a catastrophe." Hakar let out a short, harsh laugh. He said, "The galactic community? There is no community. There is only power and the will to use it. You have passed my tests, human. You have shown a surprising degree of courage and a strange, but not entirely contemptible, code of honor. You may present your proof." But be warned, if I detect even a hint of deception, I will have your heart cut out and served to my guards." This was their chance. Rostova gave a subtle nod, and on the bridge of the Vanguard, Kalen activated the holographic projector. A three-dimensional image materialized in the center of the throne room. It was a recording of Jax Thorne, his face twisted with zeal, outlining his plan to his co-conspirators. They watched as he detailed the false flag attack, the plan to use Eldrin weapon signatures to provoke a Vraxic response. They saw the star charts, the timetables, the cold, calculated logistics of galactic war. As the presentation reached its climax, a calm, urgent voice came through the comlink in Rostova's ear. It was Kalen. He said, "Captain, we have a problem. The Heirs has just dropped out of warp at the edge of the system. They're early. They're powering up their weapons. They're preparing to fire on the orbital defense platforms. The trap was about to be sprung. They were out of time." Rostova looked at Hakar. The warlord was staring at the holographic image of Jax Thorne, his expression unreadable, his massive form utterly still. The fate of the galaxy rested on his decision. Then, slowly, Hakar rose from his throne. He looked not at the hologram, but at Aris. He said, "Your brother is a fool. He believes that war is a matter of strategy and firepower. He does not understand that war, true war, is a matter of honor, and he has none." He turned to his honor guard. His voice boomed through the throne room, a command that was instantly obeyed. He said, "Sound the alarm. Scramble the fleet. A human ship has come to our doorstep, seeking to die. We shall grant its request." The Vraxic war machine roared to life. Sirens blared through the citadel. The honor guards rushed from the room, their plasma rifles at the ready. Hakar turned back to the diplomatic party. He said, "You have your alliance, human. You have your chance to stop your brother. But do not mistake my actions for friendship. I am doing this to protect my empire and to crush a dishonorable foe. Now, get back to your ships. The battle is about to begin." As they raced back to the shuttle, the air vibrating with the energy of a fleet preparing for war, Aris felt a strange sense of relief. He had faced the greatest warrior in the galaxy and won him over, not with weapons, but with words. But the victory was short-lived. Now he had to face his own brother in a battle that would determine the future of humanity and the fate of the galaxy itself. The final confrontation was at hand. Space erupted. The Vraxic fleet, a wave of brutalist, dagger-shaped warships, surged from the planet's atmosphere to meet the lone human titan. The Ars, caught completely by surprise, found itself facing not a handful of orbital defense platforms, but the full, furious might of the Vraxic Empire. Plasma torpedoes and particle beams, colored a violent crimson, streaked across the void. On the bridge of the Heirs, Admiral Jax Thorne stared at the tactical display, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. He snarled, "How? How did they know? It's impossible." His plan, so carefully constructed, had crumbled to dust in a matter of minutes. He had expected to fight a skirmish. Instead, he was facing an armada. The Allied fleet, consisting of the Vanguard and the Steward of the Void, held back, observing the initial chaos. Their role was not to join the Vraxic's frontal assault, but to execute a far more delicate and dangerous plan. Rostova's voice was calm and clear as she gave her orders. She said, "Kalen, signal Warlord Hakar. Tell him to concentrate his fire on the Ares' aft shields. We need him to create a diversion. Vorlag, are you in position?" From the bridge of the Steward, the Eldrin commander's voice came back, cool and professional. Vorlag said, "We are in position, Captain, ready to deploy on your command." Their plan was a symphony of their combined strengths. The Vraxic would provide the brute force, a relentless, overwhelming assault designed to keep the heirs focused on its own survival. The Eldron, with their superior shield technology, would provide the defense, creating a protective corridor for the vanguard. And the humans, with their talent for improvisation, would deliver the final, surgical strike. Rostova said, "Glint, how's our little surprise package?" In the engine room, Glint grinned, her face illuminated by the glow of a dozen consoles. She said, "The resonance torpedo is ready for launch, Captain. We've integrated Xylar's algorithms. When this thing hits the Ares' shields, it won't explode. It'll ring them like a bell, creating a microsecond of frequency overload. It should be just long enough to knock out their short-range sensors and create a blind spot." Rostova nodded. "Launch on my mark. Ares, are you ready?" Ares stood on the transporter pad, a slim data spike in his hand. He was wearing a light, flexible environment suit, his face pale but determined. He said, "I'm ready, Captain." His mission was the most dangerous of all. He was going to board his brother's ship alone and attempt to shut down its systems from the inside. The battle raged. The Ares, though outnumbered, was a formidable opponent. Its advanced weapon systems carved a swathe of destruction through the Vraxic fighter screens. But the Vraxic were relentless, their pilots fighting with a suicidal ferocity. They swarmed the human Titan, their smaller ships absorbing its fire, sacrificing themselves to give their larger cruisers a clear shot. Hakar's voice boomed over the Allied comm channel. He said, "The human fights well, for a coward, but he cannot win. We are breaking through his shields." Rostova saw her opening. She said, "Now, Vorlag. Now, Glint." The steward of the void surged forward, its biocrystalline hull shimmering as it projected a corridor of stable energy directly toward the Yars. At the same moment, the Vanguard launched its single resonance torpedo. The torpedo, silent and invisible, slipped through the chaos of the battle and struck the heirs' forward shield. There was no explosion, only a high-pitched electronic scream that echoed across the comm channels. For a fraction of a second, the Titan's shields flickered and died. Rostova said, "Kalen, get him over there. Go, go, go!" In a flash of light, Ares was gone, transported from the Vanguard's bridge into the heart of his brother's war machine. He materialized in a deserted maintenance corridor, the ship's internal alarms blaring around him. He had studied the schematics of the Ars for weeks. He knew its systems, its weaknesses, its blind spots. He moved quickly and silently, a ghost in the machine, making his way toward the secondary engineering control room. On the bridge of the Ars, Jax Thorne watched in fury as his shields buckled under the combined assault. He roared, "Find me the ship that fired that torpedo. I want it reduced to atoms." But his sensor officers were in a panic. Their short-range systems were down, their tactical display a mess of static and ghost signals. Jax didn't have time to understand what had happened. The Vraxic fleet, sensing his weakness, pressed their attack, their crimson energy beams hammering against his hull. He was blind, besieged, and his perfect plan was turning into a suicide mission. Eris reached the engineering console. He slammed the data spike into the port, and a stream of code flooded the Ares' systems. It wasn't a virus. It was a logic bomb, a program designed to exploit his brother's own arrogance. It didn't shut down the ship's core systems. It did something far more subtle. It initiated a full, system-wide diagnostic, the kind a commander would run in peacetime to ensure their ship was in perfect condition. On the bridge, every console suddenly went blank, replaced by a single scrolling wall of text. System diagnostic in progress. Please stand by. The ship's weapons went silent. Its engines sputtered and died. The mighty Ares, the most advanced battle titan in the human fleet, was dead in the water, paralyzed by its own internal protocols. Jax Thorne stared at the screen, his face a picture of utter disbelief. He said, "No, this is impossible." And then a new message appeared on the main viewer. It was a simple line of text, a message from the ghost in his machine. It read, "Checkmate, brother." Jax knew. He knew who had done this to him. He turned, his face contorted with a primal rage, and saw Ares standing in the doorway of the bridge, his environment suit shimmering in the emergency lighting. Jax screamed, You did this! You traitorous coward!" Ares walked slowly onto the bridge, his gaze steady. He said, "It's over, Jax. Your war is lost. Your backers on Earth have been exposed. There's nowhere left for you to run." Jax lunged at him, his hands outstretched, his face a mask of pure hatred. But he never reached him. A squad of Vraxic warriors, their plasma rifles raised, materialized on the bridge, their transporters locking onto the signal from Rostova's shuttle, which had docked with the crippled Titan. They surrounded Jax, their presence a final, undeniable symbol of his defeat. The battle was over. The Vraxic fleet, their honor satisfied, ceased their fire. The Steward of the Void and the Vanguard moved in, their medical and engineering teams preparing to secure the Ares and take its crew into custody. Weeks later, in the quiet circular meeting room on the Sargal Nexus, the leaders of the new alliance met one last time. The Tangleweaver's data chip, transmitted back to Earth by the Vanguard, had caused a political firestorm. The consortium behind Jax Thorne had been arrested, their assets seized, their conspiracy brought to light. Humanity, shamed and humbled, had begun the long, difficult process of rebuilding its reputation on the galactic stage. Warlord Hakar, his massive form filling one side of the room, gave a curt nod to Rostova. He said, "Your brother fought with courage, Ares Thorne. But his cause was without honor. He will be imprisoned, but he will not be executed. He will live to see the new era of peace he tried so desperately to prevent. That is a fitting punishment." Vorlog, his multifaceted eyes seeming to smile, looked at the human captain. He said, "The Eldren Collective is in your debt, Captain Rostova. You have shown us that humanity is more than its capacity for violence. You have shown us its capacity for wisdom and for peace. The Pax Celestis has begun. Perhaps this time it will last." Rostova looked at Ares, who stood beside her, no longer a man running from his family's shadow, but a diplomat who had saved the galaxy. She thought of the long journey ahead, the treaties to be signed, the trust to be rebuilt. It would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, it felt possible. She said, "The work is just beginning, but we will do it together." As their ships prepared to leave the Nexus, heading back to their respective homes, Ares stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, looking out at the endless sea of stars. The first transmission from a human battle titan had sparked panic and fear. But the second, the one he had helped to write, had sparked something else entirely. It had sparked a conversation, an alliance, a fragile but persistent hope. The silence of the void was no longer a thing to be feared. It was an invitation, a promise of a future where humanity, finally, was ready to listen.